Hi Mom, hi Dad. What is up, everybody? After our adventure out at Nutmeg Nor'easter in Connecticut, we were on to the next leg of the journey, which was going to involve some bike touring. At Nutmeg Nor'easter, I had frayed a cable and it was coming through the housing. My derailleur hanger was also bent. So in the backseat of the car, Erin was looking up bike shops and she found this one in New Haven, Connecticut that was open on Sunday, the Devil's Gear. We called them. They were willing to check out my bike. We dropped it off. They fixed the cable and the housing, straightened the hanger, while we went out and got lunch. So, man, this shop was one cool no matter what. A lot of cool stuff in there. The guys were really friendly. They were also out at Nutmeg Nor'easter, so obviously our kind of people. So I cannot thank them enough for getting my bike set up, because I had about 300 some miles and 20,000 elevation to do over the next 6 days, and knowing that the bike was going to be in top shape was great. So thanks to Erin and thanks to the Devil's Gear. If you're ever in New Haven, definitely stop by there.
What the fuck are you even doing?
We had a cabin rented in the Letchworth State Park area, which is south of Rochester, New York, a little bit.
Bon voyage, baby cakes.
Here we go.
Brad and Erin hopped in their cars and they were on the road back to Ohio. Me and Ben hopped on our bikes and we were on the road back to Ohio, but it was just going to take us a much longer time. On the way out of the cabin area, I hit a root while I was trying to buckle my helmet with one hand, and I went right over the bars. It sent me kind of flying. Good thing is I cleared the bike so I didn't bang anything on the metal of the bike. Knocked the wind out of me. I didn't think it was a big deal when I landed on my side, but that would come back and have some consequences later on down the road. As you could see, it was very cold and frosty, the coldest morning we've had all year. Still, I haven't even had a morning this cold as I'm recording this over a week later back in Ohio, but it made it absolutely beautiful out as you could see it. I was a little nervous about this morning and some other of the weather we had on the way on the trip, but we had done our best to prepare, so we were going to do it. So we were out on the road and we were just going for it. I will talk about our clothing choices and our packing choices and the decisions we had made in a little bit here, but basically this trip was going to be a credit card tour. We had spots booked all along the way, and at no point when we were out here was I ever wishing that I was sleeping in a tent. You know, there's a time and a place for that. I love to do that, but I was really glad at this point in the season and with these very cold mornings that we had warm showers and beds. After some road miles, we dropped down into the Genesee River Valley, and as you could see, we were on this very rustic Genesee River trail. Here, the trail was actually kind of obstructed, not kind of, completely obstructed, and it took us a while to drag our bikes through there, but then we were back on track. This is a trail that would have been so awesome on a different day. Knowing that we had over an 80-mile day and considerable elevation coming up, it was a little rough in spots and a little slow going. By the time we got here, it smoothed out, but it was still mostly grass and a little bit softer. You know, not horrible, but like I said, really pretty, and on a different day would have been perfect. But there were parts where this coincided with a not very busy road, so we did kind of switch between jumping out on the road for little sections and then jumping back on the trail when it made sense, just kind of keeping our eyes on the map. As you can see, it was incredibly foggy down here in the river valley, and it didn't burn off till sometime after 10 a.m. So I was excited for this trip, but as mentioned, also a little nervous. I've never done a bike tour this late in the season personally, and also we had some big days. This day was going to be over 87 miles and over 5,000 feet of elevation. There was also some bad weather in the forecast down the road. This day was supposed to be okay. Most of the days would start off pretty cold, but then get up into the 50s, so it was just one of those mixed things where we kind of needed a lot of different clothes for the different situations. So even though it was a credit card tour, our bikes necessarily weren't super light. I wouldn't say fully loaded, but almost as close as to the kind of weight I would have on my bike if I had my camping gear and less clothes with me in the summer. So my clothing strategy for the mornings was these tights you're seeing, they're by Smart Wool, and they kind of have like this what they call a 3D printed weave, but it kind of just keeps it from really sticking to you, and they're a little thicker. I was just wearing some shorts over top of that by the Swerve brand that went out of business. I wore knee-high 45 North socks every single day, and I ended up leaving those on for the whole duration of the days, even when it got a little warmer. I was hoping I could get away with riding in my Vans, but I'm really glad that I ended up wearing my more winter-oriented 510s. My feet were never numb or in a lot of pain, but they were cold on some mornings, so having the 510s was good. I would have been way too cold in the slip-ons, and I was never overheated in the 510s. This part of the trail, by the way, was really pretty along the old canal, which I assume was a smaller canal that went into the Erie Canal. Actually stopped and took some photos, and as always, those will be at the end of this video. And then here we did come along a trail detour. It looks like it's been a detour for a long time. And then on the detour, we saw this road closed sign. So we were getting really nervous on a long day. We were going to have a lot more miles added. Turns out we were able to get around all this pretty easily, and it did not add a ton of time to our day. I will get back to the clothing strategy in a little bit here, but as we broke off the trail to continue heading south, the trail headed in a different direction. It's where our climbing started. We did climb about 1,000 feet to get out of the Genesee River Valley and up into the hills that we would be in.
Too hot on the way up, too cold on the way down. These roads are wild. Gravel roads, just straight down, straight up. $40 miles in, 2,000 feet of elevation already. I think it's gonna be a little less than 90 today. 90 miles. Whew. A little guy sunning himself. Comes another little guy.
So what you saw me wearing on top there is what I would end up wearing as the day wore on. I have a wool base layer on and then a wool t-shirt. Sometimes I wore a sun shirt over that wool base layer, and then my Surly wool jersey, which is a little thicker. I love those. I have a couple of them. All my friends have them and wear them all the time. They're one of the best pieces of kit, as they say, that I own. And I always had my 45 North Breezy cycling cap on. It's a wool cap. It usually doesn't bother me too much when it gets warm, but what I did is I would just fold up the ear flaps when I needed to. And then I brought 2 pairs of wool defeat gloves. When it was really cold, I would just double them up. Got a little warmer, take off one set, got even warmer. I would take my gloves off completely. It's weird because my hands will get so cold in the winter, but they also get so hot, and I don't like them being hot. This was our lunch stop in Friendship about halfway through the day. It was this little gas station, and they didn't really have any seating except for those 2 chairs, and we sat down to wait for our food while they made it, and then we just stayed in those seats, had some warm coffee, and our sandwiches were really, really good. So one of those places that you're never sure what's going to happen, and then always awesome when it turns out to be a good spot. We knew with this long day we didn't want to spend a lot of time stopping, so that was also pretty good to get a little bit rested up, but not spend a ton of time, waiting for table service or anything like that.
Do not pet the fluffy dogs.
This trip was going to have us pretty far out there, and this abandoned road that we're climbing right now, when we got to the hotel and I looked at my Strava, only 8 people had ever logged that on Strava. If you're not a Strava user, say I took a typical segment around here, there would be thousands of people who have ridden it. That was a pretty tough climb, and now we were like kind of up and down on all these different gravel roads. So again, that's just a big reason why we did not want to spend a lot of time stopping, knowing that we had climbing and just a long way to go, and we always did want to beat the sunset on this trip if we could. So the whole first half of the day had us kind of splitting through the state forest in New York, except when we were in the towns. And then the second half we had crossed into PA and we were kind of heading through the game land. So when you see the gravel roads, those are usually the PA game lands that we are in. So out here we had a couple sections of pretty road riding. We were on our way this night to Coudersport. We had some cabins booked on the outskirts of town. But before we would get into town, we had some more gravel road climbs to get under our belts. So this climb again here was about 800 feet we had. It would be the last climb of the day. The surface was much better than the abandoned road. You didn't have to worry about your line too much, but it was just a gravel road that they do not maintain in the winter. There was one little more lump, and then we would mostly be descending at the end of the day down into Coudersport. Getting into Coudersport was kind of cool because we had this dirt gravel road thing. I don't know what to call it. It's not even marked on the map, but like I mentioned, my Stravas are all linked below. Ben had ridden into Coudersport the year before when he rode home from Nutmeg, so he knew that the main road was kind of busy with not that much of a shoulder, so it was cool that he found that. Our spot was called the Lindy Motel. Our room was pretty cool. It was an individual cabin that was built in the 1930s, and they've all recently been renovated under a new owner. So even though they have this rustic and vintage charm, they are nice and clean. The shower's absolutely blasted hot water, which was awesome because you're wondering what a shower is going to be like in a place like that. We chilled out on the beds for a little while after our showers, kind of, 87 miles, over 5,000 feet, needed a rest. And then we decided to go out and get dinner at this place called Vinny's Bar on the outskirts of town. It was fine. I don't know. We didn't feel that welcomed. Nobody was mean to us. Nothing was, blatant, but it did kind of feel like bad vibes. It seems like this town totally caters towards the hunting community, which makes sense. All the game lands are around here. But yeah, they don't seem like they cared about having our recreation dollars here. So really liked the hotel, was not crazy about the bar. And also when we went and got breakfast, we kind of just had the same bad vibes. Fine breakfast. No one was blatantly mean to us, but they were definitely looking at us like we were aliens. Granted, we are on a bike tour in winter clothes, but whatever. This day was actually going to be a little shorter, so we decided to cruise around the town and take a look at everything. Two rivers come together here, and it's crazy to see the Allegheny, how small it is out here, because I'm so used to it being such a broad river. And if you're from Pittsburgh or anything like that, you know all about what the Allegheny actually looks like. But yeah, we were just kind of checking out all the different buildings, cruising around downtown, this old train station, before we headed to the outskirts on the other side of town to our breakfast spot. So I had mentioned kind of my base layers up top. What I would also do when it was very cold in the morning, which was pretty much every morning except one, was also I had my windbreaker on, and then over top of that I have a chrome vest which has a light down lining. So that was just enough to keep me a little warmer in the mornings. When we would get to the climbs, me and Ben would often stop, get rid of layers right there before we started climbing, pack those in the bag, and then, as you could see, start doing these crazy climbs up into the game lands again. So when we planned this route, we thought we were going to have 2 over 80-mile days in a row. Somehow, when me and Ben got together and we were booking everything, we booked a spot on this day in the wrong spot. So this day was actually only going to be 30 miles. It was still had these punchy climbs, and I was a little tired from yesterday, so this turned out to be a really good thing. The reason we ended up sticking with this plan, even though we made that mistake, is because if we would have changed this night and gone back to the original route plan, it would have meant we would have had to rebook everything out the rest of the trip. But again, it was a mistake, but I'm glad we made it
13 miles,
because this was,
feet.
even though it was only 30 miles, not necessarily an easy feeling day, especially with the miles from, like I said, the day before, but also nutmeg and everything else in the legs. So it turned out to be a unexpected little benefit. We also did have a slight problem with the route. Before we started doing the gravel climbing, one of the roads we had on the route was a private road, and the owner of that private road happened to be pulling out in his truck and unlocking his gate right when we got there. So we're like, we better reroute around. And so that pretty much doubled the climbing for the day. The really cool thing, though, about this day was you saw we did that rip and road descent. Then we cut onto that gravel, made a little dog leg, and the rest of the day was mostly this long, gradual descent. It was really great because you could just lightly pedal or not pedal at all and just really keep moving. I think we had almost 10 miles of descending through here. Today's destination was kind of a classic little motel, the Buttonwood Motel, on the slight outskirts of Emporium, Pennsylvania. And the final run into town was along this paved road on the river. There was some traffic, but there was plenty of shoulder. We had no issues. People were really nice to us out on the road. So even though we kind of felt like some bad vibes on day one, being in the restaurants and the stuff like that, we always got plenty of space when we were trying to ride. Ben and I were chilling out again a little bit in the beds, just hanging out, resting. We opened the door and we're like, wow, it's really beautiful out. And I was like, what would I do on a beautiful day where I have nothing I have to do and a few hours of daylight left? Hey, why don't we go ride bikes? So we decided to go and check out the town. We rode all around the little trail that goes through the town, over the river here, and then back on the old railroad bridge. Up here is a old Sylvania factory. It looks like part of it is being used, but most of it is abandoned. So they did vacuum tubes and light bulbs and all that stuff, the famous company you probably should know. Really pretty here along the river. So we kind of had this great afternoon ride. Our original plan was to just find a place to get pizza and a 6-pack and bring it back to the room. We decided to eat in this Dempsey's pizza spot, and we're glad we did because our waitress was awesome. She was really, really nice. And the next morning, we actually went to a coffee shop and the same thing. Everyone was really, really cool. So I'm really glad that the vibes changed. People asked us what we were doing. They were interested. And so I was kind of picturing this whole thing where we weren't going to have much, chatting with people and all that stuff out on the trip, but the vibe completely changed. I kind of made fun of why do they have a bottle opener in the bathroom when we got to the hotel, and then it actually came in handy later. So this is the next morning. We were back out on the road and ready to go for the next day. Again, like I said, with the vibe shift, the table next to us was really interested in what we were doing. When we walked out the door, they said, good luck on your journey, stay safe. Then we were out on this trail. This trail is kind of interesting because there were a bunch of signs through town that said no two-wheeled vehicles. So I don't know if those were signs for winter because these are snowmobile trails and they don't want bike tracks chopping them up. I'm not sure. If someone knows that about Pennsylvania or this area, let me know why they would say that. We passed people and no one obviously said anything to us, and this became a bike trail. So this was the West Creek Recreational Trail. It was a really great trail, really pretty, and also a wonderful way to start a morning, just being out on a bike path away from the traffic and just getting to ride. Slight railroad grade, nothing big, quick enough rolling. So we had about 17 miles on that trail, this really quick steep descent here, and then the climbing for the day was going to begin. This was going to be about a 62-mile day and about 3,400 feet of climbing. This was the first big one. It was a road climb, but it was definitely a steep one. So here we are back in the game land, state game land number 25, if you're keeping count. That's not how you would keep track of this stuff, but if you want to know where we are. Anyways, we knew we had to be fairly strategic on a number of these days. We had really looked into the map and planned where stops were and options for refilling water or food were. Our stop on this night was going to be on the edge of the Allegheny National Forest, and we knew there was going to be nothing around it. So we had planned for when we'd have lunch that we would then also plan to get enough stuff to have something for dinner. This road was crazy. And so I think we're really lucky because I think hunting season didn't start for a few days, so there weren't people out here and there weren't a lot of people passing us. Some of those weren't even allowed to have cars on them anyways, but it was really, really cool that we had those to ourselves, even though they were tough and climby, and yeah. So here we are entering Wilcox, Pennsylvania. We circled around a spot that Ben ate at the year before, but it was no longer open, but we did have this winery marked down on our map. We knew they had food and everything like that. They made their own seltzers. They had all kinds of beer. It was kind of a cool selection. The bartender was wonderful. The other customers in there were really nice as well. So what we did is we ate our wraps, we ate our chips and all that kind of thing, and then we ordered a second one and put them in our bags for later. We also knew we were going to be climbing right out of town, and the climbing out of town was no joke.
What kind of gravel is this? I think champagne is the term. Champagne gravel.
So neither of us really mind the climbing, and we were often just like right away putting it into the easy gear. We knew we had long days and all that kind of thing. We were not really trying to hammer out any of these days. Like I said, we were definitely keeping moving. We weren't stopping a lot unless we were taking a couple pictures or eating. But in general, we were, just always plugging along. This is the Knox and Cane Trail, and this was a great way to end the day as well. A really pretty trail, and the climbing for the most part was over on here. There was some undulation, but we knew this is what was going to be getting us to our motel. We did jump off the trail here for a while. This is one thing that Ben rode last year, and he stayed on the trail, and there was tons of hike-a-bike from so many downed trees. But at the time, he said he had no service and couldn't tell if this road mirrored the trail well enough. And so he had a rough part of his trip last year, and we had a much smoother sailing by breaking off. I think it's because we had exited the park, and maybe so the park was not maintaining the trail there. Either way, we took this road to our motel, which was way better, and we'd be able to jump back on the trail when it becomes maintained again the next day. Forecast was all for rain, so we did a little bit of bike maintenance when we got to this motel. And again, this motel was kind of middle of nowhere, no amenities around. And it was pretty interesting because there's actually a back door here, and out there were picnic tables and chairs and fire pits. I've just never stayed at something that looks like a traditional motel, but then is like more catered towards the outdoors experience. So this is the day that had me nervous. It was supposed to be storming and raining and crazy winds all day. The people at the winery told us that all the Halloween stuff in Pittsburgh had been canceled. Even though we had heard it raining all night, it was kind of nice because when we hopped on our bikes, it was actually very, very light rain. As you could see, we're both trying out these Clever hoods. We've tried them a couple times before, but this was going to be the first time that we have really put them to the test and worn them for a full day. I've owned mine for about a year, and this is exactly the kind of thing I bought it for. And even though I came to think these are the perfect thing for a commuter, I did really appreciate it over the idea of trying to wear a rain jacket or trying to wear a rain jacket and pants. I was saying to Ben by the time I got my GoPro out here and started filming, I wish it wasn't raining so bad because this trail was really pretty through here, but I had to kind of be strategic. When I was trying to get it out, I was definitely trying not to get myself all wet. The way these ponchos work is you have a couple thumb loops that kind of keep it so it doesn't blow up off your handlebars, and then there's a belt loop in the back, and you just kind of put that around your stomach more so than your waist, and it keeps it from blowing way up in the back. We stopped at that gas station and got snacks and coffee, kind of, again, trying to keep moving. We didn't want to be standing around on a day like this. This was supposed to be 51 miles and I think over 3,000 feet of elevation. We were also taking off some layers at the gas station. So even though a big selling point of the rain capes is that you get some airflow and they're not as hot as wearing the rain jackets and the pants, they still are a layer. So I think the idea that they keep you cooler is true, but I think it is a little bit oversold, at least from what I've heard. The other thing that makes me think they're a little better for just straight up commuting than they are for bike touring are a couple things. One is with the thumb loops, it's kind of you're supposed to be able to drape it over the bars, but if you need to see your bike computer and you need your headlight to be functional, if you have it on the bars, that just doesn't work so well. And then you also have to kind of be constantly thinking about it and trying to maintain it in the right place if you really want it to work the best. That's why I'm saying you're doing a 5-10 mile commute, awesome, no problem. You're out on 50 miles and thousands of feet of elevation. It does take a little bit more, messing around with to have it function the way you want it to. We did ride on one busier road that had plenty of shoulder. That's when the rain was coming down pretty steady, but the rest of the day after that had us on this old state road. We kind of went around and it kind of seems like maybe in spots it coincided with the modern road. But all in all, we were pretty lucky on the weather. We didn't get that heavy wind or anything like that, and this must be remnants of a tropical storm because it was kind of swirling around when you looked at the radar, and I think we got really lucky until we got into the town that was our destination, Franklin. Then it just started dumping on us. It was one of those things where you're like, hey, I'm glad it wasn't dumping all day, but as you could see, my rain cape kept my midsection dry, which is a total win for the rain cape because that's the worst part to get wet. But there's no way to sugarcoat that it sucked to get your feet completely soaked through right at the end of the day. We had a pretty shitty hotel on the outskirts of town in the commercial district. The downtown was this cute place, but it wasn't unclean or anything. It was just old, nights in, kind of beat up. With it still raining, we decided to take a lift into town to the brewery we had planned to go into, crank the heat up to 82, and hopefully we're just getting everything dry. Our Lyft driver told us that there was not a lot of lifts in town, pretty much none. When we got into the bar, being a little worried about that, I scheduled a lift the second we got there, and it showed that that wouldn't be a problem. Well, don't ever do that. That's a complete scam. I'm sure if you live in a big city, there's enough Lyft drivers, no issue. But when I went to look, like 20 minutes out when we were going to get our ride, it said looking for a Lyft driver. So we in our mind thought that it had scheduled a lift meant that there was a lift. It didn't mean that. All it meant is it was going to start looking like I would have at the time that I wanted one. Anyways, that really made us mad. So as you could see, what we ended up doing is walking into a store, buying umbrellas and emergency ponchos, and then we hoofed it the 3 miles back to our hotel. The brewery we were at the night before, though, was really good. Trails and ales. They were wonderful, good food, good drinks. In the morning, we decided to head back into town because there was a coffee shop we wanted to go to get our breakfast. The coffee shop was great for our food and drinks, but it was also part record store, so I walked around and checked that out a little bit. I was not going to be buying a record to haul all the way back to Ohio with me, though. Day 5 was going to be another big day. We still in the morning went over to this part of town that had some historical markers. This one historical marker was so old it was talking about stuff that wasn't even there at the time of the historical marker. We were joking they needed a historical marker for the historical marker. Anyways, after this, it was back across the river and then out onto this bike path. The bike path was the Allegheny River Trail. This is something I've seen on the maps before, so it was cool to finally ride it. It was a really pretty morning, and we got really lucky because it rained all night, but the rain was gone by the time we were riding.
Bye. Happy Halloween.
So at this point, we were able to see this cool railroad trestle ahead. I didn't realize it, but that was a bike path that we were going to get a ride over. There were a bunch of stairs to get up to it. We decided not to go that way. We saw this little path. It did take a little bit of a hike and bike to get over to the other path, but that was worth it. I haven't mentioned it, but on that first day when I fell down, my elbow went into my rib, and that was really wearing on me. It didn't bother me so much when I was just riding, but if I had to lift my bike up and every night sleeping and rolling over, it was really, really painful. In fact, it still feels right now like it just happened. So even though this was going to be another 80-mile day with 5,000 feet of elevation, not only have we stopped in town, but obviously we stopped to take some pictures on that rail bridge, and then we came across this really old caboose. I don't know if someone was living in that at some point or whatever, and there was another one up on the hill, but the colors were so cool we had to stop and take pictures. And then we turned onto another abandoned road climb. This climb was gnarly. I know the GoPro never shows it, as I always say, but this was super steep and the terrain was super rough and you couldn't see what the terrain really was under the leaves, but you definitely had to be picking your line. As always, totally worth it for the views, but yeah, there were some 17-18% gradients in there. Ben and I were talking about how this trip had, different cool views and some really great roads. Nothing was absolutely mind-blowing scenery, but it was just always really, really pretty. And as you could tell, this route mostly had us off the beaten path. So just a really, really great rides almost every single day. Our lunch stop was planned to be in Sandy Lake. It was only 30 miles in, but we had, again, checked out the route, and it didn't seem like there was going to be anything after Sandy Lake to stop at till our final destination. We ended up going around town a little bit and choosing this coffee shop that had these great sandwiches and even dessert. I think we actually brought some snacks for the road. So yeah, this was another one of the stops that was unexpected and turned out to be really, really good. As the route was planned, we looked at this path that was going to take us around the lake, but it was definitely a hiking path and not a cycling path. This gravel road turned out to be totally fine. It wasn't too busy, so no problem. And we did not want to poach a hiking trail on another long day. It's interesting, too, how I'm so used to crossing over freeways on long bike tours, but we have been so out here for so long that actually seemed kind of surprising to see some civilization. This little closed bridge wasn't a really big deal. We were able to get over the guardrails. But speaking of poaching hiking trails,
It doesn't look like the bridges were made for bikes.
this probably was a hiking trail. There weren't any no bike signs anywhere, but we turned onto it and we were in it, and this was supposed to be 4 miles long. Again, this is really cool, and if bikes are allowed here, it's an awesome trail, just not necessarily the trail that you want to run into on an over 80-mile day on a bike tour. After a couple miles, we were able to see the road, and we did decide to break off and take the road. Made way more sense, obviously. This is the Pymatuning area of Pennsylvania, which we have ridden out and camped at the state park there before. And here we are crossing back over into Ohio. It looked like the last 30-ish miles of the day wasn't going to be a big deal. There was a couple climbs, road climbs, a few hundred feet. Nothing crazy after what we've been going through. I've talked about this on a bike tour before. When you're climbing all the time, grades that are like 5% and stuff almost start to feel like nothing. But headwind. We had a brutal headwind. We must have been trying to ride at like 14 miles an hour and we were doing 10. It actually cracked me. I actually had to pull over, eat some snacks, recompose myself. It completely got into my head and was really tough. When we got into Warren, it was a sight for sore eyes. Our hotel was all like new-ish renovated in an old building downtown, but it was really weird because like half the lights didn't work. The bathroom lights didn't work. We had to put lamps in spots. I don't know. Anyways, we had a great dinner at a really cool spot, really cool staff. Everyone's dressed up. It's Halloween. And then we walked over through Dave Grohl Alley and into Modern Methods Brewing. We actually sat next to a couple that was a little older than us who asked if we were cyclists because of the caps, I'm sure. And they were just getting into bike touring. So I had a great conversation, some great beers, great Halloween, and then it was back to the room to crash. Oh yeah, the elevator also didn't work in the hotel. I don't know if this place is just trying to save a bunch of money on electricity or what, but they did let us keep our bikes in the conference room and they did lock it. We went and had a great breakfast in Warren too at the coffee shop. Warren, for its reputation not being great, does have some wonderful spots downtown. So we had a good time in Warren because I was joking that there's nothing scarier than Halloween in Warren, and that turned out not to be the case at all. So the ride home was going to be about 50 miles, a little over 1,000 feet of elevation, so not bad at all after what we've been doing the whole time. The first part of the trip had us going, as you saw, just through those neighborhoods and then out on these country roads. We were going to have plenty of bike path as well, so it was just a pleasant ride on the way home. One of the things that I was thinking that is pretty unique about this trip is I'm kind of a busybody and I don't just relax a lot, but since we weren't stopping and we were trying to beat the sunset, we were always getting into the hotels and just hanging out and watching some TV or just slowly eating or chilling and having a beer. I have to say that was kind of a nice change of pace for someone like me. Here we are getting into Garrettsville. This is actually Ben's hometown. If you watch this channel a lot, you're probably familiar with the Headwaters Trail we're jumping on here. We come out here at least once a year to camp. Ben's family's property is just actually off this trail. They have a really cool spot. We go and camp out here. Then also the first big event of the year, the Road Apple Rebay, actually hits the Headwaters Trail towards the end. So a route that I know pretty well. After we get off the Headwaters, we have a few road miles until we connect to the Portage County Hike and Bike. There were all these groups of people out here walking with backpacks on. So I don't know if they were doing I don't know what it would be, endurance walking. Like they were coming from the Headwaters also and heading out to this trail. I'd love to know if anyone knows about this kind of thing. So here we are back in Kent, Ohio. If you've watched this channel at all, you're definitely familiar with it. A couple different bike trails that can take you back to Akron.
Well, Ben stopped in Kent for lunch. I am finishing this last 10 miles. I gotta get to the Edmond.
So Ben and I actually would have been splitting in Kent anyways, because I'm taking the hiking bike home and he would have taken the Freedom. They just go more directly to where we each live, since he's in Akron proper and I'm in Cuyahoga Falls. I have to say there was something that felt unique about being out there so far for so long and then being back on my home roads in the same trip. I don't really know how to describe it because I've done bike tours and ended up at home before, but this time it just felt different. So that is pretty much it. It was 380 miles with our little dinner and side trips and just under 20,000 feet of elevation for this 6 days of riding. I do have the Strava's link below. Obviously, if you're ever going to do something like this, do some research, study them, look at other options. I think it's a great route, but, you know, it's definitely not for everybody.
Hello, Edmund. 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 Hey, up here. Hello. Edmund.
Give this video a like. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.